So this month my mental health has not been too great. I have done a couple of videos before on my emetophobia. I will link those below in the description box. One is all about how I have found dealing with that particular phobia now that I have 3 children, and the other was about getting help for my emetophobia when I had CBT and counselling therapy for it a few years ago. Lots of people have commented on those, particularly the one about having children. There seems to be a lot of people who are really interested on just how you cope with that sort of crippling fear when you've got your own kids and you can't run away from it. So if you want to watch that, that is down below. Today's video is going to be more about the typical thought processes I have when my emetophobia is particularly bad. I have been keeping a little thought diary this month, just every time, not every time because it's pretty much all the time, but any particular sort of thoughts or stresses to do with my emetophobia that have stood out in particular, I've been jotting them down. Normally I would keep this all to myself because it's quite scary to put those thoughts out there, because I know that a lot of them are really irrational and it's the sort of thing that you just want to keep to yourself, and you don't really want everyone to be so aware of like how crazy you might sound in your head when your anxieties are running high. But I thought maybe it would actually be helpful if I shared my thoughts today, because for 2 reasons. Either you will be feeling the same way and this will help you in some way to know that you're not alone, or if you have no idea how emetophobia affects a person, this might give you a good idea of what it's like to live inside the head of someone who suffers with this particular phobia. So we've had a tummy bug in the house this month, which obviously has led to me having lots of good content for my thought diary. Normally in recent years when we've had tummy bugs in the house, I've kind of just rolled with it and I've really surprised myself at how well I have dealt with it all. But this one, for some reason, seemed to knock me a bit, and I could feel the stress and the worry and the anxiety rising. One thing I always feel guilty about having the kids and having this phobia is when the phobia affects our day-to-day life. And I will admit that with this last sick bug that we had in the house, which actually only affected 1 child, this is how silly it is, it wasn't even a big bug at all by any standards, but this bug, for some reason, I managed to let it inside and it affected our family life for the last 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, so that was the other thing that's happened in the last month, is Sam and I got married, and I have this thing with emetophobia surrounding big events where I get very, very anxious and stressed that the event is going to be spoiled by a sickness bug attacking our family at that specific point when I really, really, really don't want it to happen. For me, it's about control. If I can control it, I feel calm. Things that I can't control, I worry about. So something like that for me is like my worst nightmare, not only because of the fear of being sick, but just the absolute sort of disappointment that would happen if, I mean, you know, imagine if the kids got sick on our wedding day and they weren't able to be there with us. That for me is like the worst thing that could happen. So all that meant was that in the week leading up to our wedding day, I was a massive ball of stress, and not because I was getting married. I was fine about that and all the big planning of the day that we had to do. It was because I was terrified that my kids were going to get ill. So I couldn't sleep, I didn't eat very well, I was just focused on it, but I was not trying to be focused on it, and I wasn't mentioning that this worry was eating me up, because if I mention it, then it feels more real. It's one of the more irrational thought processes that I have surrounding emetophobia, which is that if I say the fear out loud, for some reason in my head, if I say the fear out loud, that makes it more likely that it will happen. So I keep it all bottled up, all to myself. I don't tell Sam, I don't tell anyone what's worrying me. I just keep it in, cross my fingers and hope that it doesn't happen. I also get this every single Christmas time. The same fear, the same stress, the same sleepless nights, until I know that we're clear and that the kids will enjoy their day. And so what this tends to mean, about a week and a half before any big event, I will go into kind of lockdown mode and I won't really take the kids out if I can avoid it. If they're at school, I can't avoid it, and therefore it's actually a lot less stressful during those times because I know I can't avoid it, I know I have no choice, so I just kind of let it go. But during the last month, it's been summer holidays, so I've had the option to keep them at home. At Christmas I usually have the option to keep them at home, so we just tend to not go anywhere. I won't take them anywhere where they could possibly pick up germs, and we just have a really boring week, which obviously does start to affect the kid. I have written down obsessive thoughts about trying to control my children catching a bug. So I think that basically means that for the last month I've just knowingly been having these obsessive thoughts. Like, I know they're happening, I know they're obsessive, I know they're not rational, but they're still happening, and it still doesn't, I can't reason myself out of the irrational thoughts, if that makes sense. And the thoughts are kind of a vicious circle, because if we don't go out for that week before a big event and the kids don't get ill, that kind of positively reinforces my actions and makes me think, okay, I've done the right thing, and it's because we didn't go out. And then if they do happen to get ill despite us not going out, then I just think, well, there's literally nothing I can do. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I get scared about the fact that I have so little control over the situation. I think my overall point here with what I've written down is that I know that you cannot win either way with this sort of obsessive thought pattern. No one's winning either way. However you try to control it, there's going to be some negative knock-on effects. So the next thing that happened in the last month was that we went on our first family camping trip. I have done a vlog on this if you want to go and watch it. It was our only plan to go away all summer, and I really just wanted it to work out. So the week before, again, I kept the kids at home. We didn't do anything. We had a boring week because I didn't want them picking up germs. That was the main thing. I didn't really say that to anyone, but that was my main motivation for having a week at home. So typically what happened when we were away the second night, my middle child came down with a tummy bug. So just to reinforce my previous point, it's absolutely sod's law. You can do whatever you want to think that you've got a hold on trying to stop them getting germs, and then they just go and get them anyway. There is literally nothing you can do. So that kind of pissed me off, to be honest. That took a while to kind of settle in, that even though I tried to control it, things had gone wrong. So the next thought process that I've written down, which kind of sprung out of this whole thing happening when we were camping, was that when one of my children is ill or someone's ill in the house, I literally cannot think more than one day ahead. It's like my brain just kind of shuts down and deals with as much as it can do, which is just what's happening in the here and now. I didn't want to make any plans, I didn't want to go out, I didn't want to think any more than the kind of 24 hours that we were in. And that is because we're in the limbo stage where we don't know if anyone else is going to get it. So for me, because it's a phobia, because it's a massive fear for me, my brain just does what it can to cope, and that is just focusing on the here and now, the next sort of day or so, and not being able to kind of process anything beyond that or make plans for the future. I'm literally thinking one day ahead. I'm incapable of even thinking 3 or 4 days ahead at this stage. It's not actually that easy to explain the thoughts that I've written down without kind of explaining the big backstory behind all these individual thoughts. So the last one on my list is that I was terrified of letting my 7-year-old go on a play date as a result of this bug that only my middle child got in the end. No one else got it. So as I said at the beginning, it's just sod's law that the one where only one of them got it is the one that I got so stressed about. And my son had been invited on a play date at one of his school friends' houses, and I really didn't want to let him go. It was, I think, 6 days after Rory had had the bug on the Saturday. So by all means you'd think you're in the clear, and you know, they'd definitely be back at school by that stage. The school's got 24-hour rules, so 6 days is great. That's like, yay, we're in the clear. But in my head, we're not in the clear, because as soon as I start to think we're in the clear, that's when something happens, or the next one goes down with something. It's happened before in the past when we've got to kind of the 4-day point and you think, oh, can we start thinking that no one else is going to get it? And then they do. So even on day 6, I'm still worrying. I think, to be honest, it would have to get to like day 8 for me before I could be like, okay, it's fine. And my biggest fear these days, apart from me getting it myself, is one of my children being sick outside of the house, being sick at someone else's house, somewhere where I'm not in control of the impending disaster and I can't easily sort it out in my own comfort zone and kind of let myself get through the stress of it at the same time. Also, I worry about them, that I'm going to leave them at someone's house and that's horrible for them to not be with me when they're sick. So it's kind of a double whammy of all of these things mixed in together. But yeah, that's really my biggest fear, is them being sick somewhere outside of home where it's harder to deal with for everyone. So that's why I really didn't want to let him go. I was pondering like up until the last hour, just thinking, oh, shall I just text an excuse? It would just be easier, then I won't have the worry. But I knew that if I did that, that's going to affect my son, and it's not fair on him to suffer because of my stupid irrational anxieties. So we went ahead with the play date, and the whole time he was there I was just sitting like on the edge of my seat at home thinking, how early can I go and get him without it seeming weird? Is he all right? They're gonna call me in a minute. I know they're gonna call me in a minute. It was fine, he was fine, but I just had this sinking worry, which kind of feels, and I don't know if anyone else that suffers with emetophobia or any kind of serious phobia feels the same, but the sinking worry almost feels like a prediction, like a premonition, and you just kind of know that if you get that phone call, you'll know what it is because you've been worrying about it the whole time. So obviously it was going to be that. I don't know if that makes sense, but the worry sometimes does basically feel like I'm sort of predicting the future to me. Well, that is all the thoughts that I wrote down. And actually this, as I say, this has been a stressful month emetophobia wise, but it's not been a bad one, because if it was a bad one, I wouldn't be able to talk to the camera about this. I wouldn't be able to voice these thoughts. Like when my emetophobia has been really bad in my life, I have not been talking about it at all. It's all been inside me, and I've just been trying to cope and trying to ride through it. But I do think it's helpful for me to share this stuff. I know there's a lot of people out there suffering with the same sort of things and phobias and thought processes that I am, and it's been really lovely to hear from you all on the other videos that I've done, and I hope that you guys can continue to kind of get help for your emetophobia, to talk about it. I say in every video, it does help to talk about it. Don't keep it all inside. Even if you can't talk to someone, write it down. Do what I did, write your thought processes out, because it does really help you to start to understand kind of how your mind works. And I think even though we can't stop the thought patterns, we can't stop the behaviours, we can look at them on paper and recognise that's completely irrational and that's silly, and in some small way that does help. Ugh, I find these videos really hard to do. Like, I feel so kind of chaotic in my speech when I'm doing these videos, because it's a subject that I find really hard to talk about. Like, I can already feel my stress levels kind of rising, my pulse is faster. If there is anything else on the subject of emetophobia around children, pregnancy, any topic that you'd like to hear more from me, do let me know in the comments. If you've had any of the same silly thought processes and irrationalities that I've had, do let me know as well, because so far I still think it's probably only me, even though I know it's probably lots and lots and lots of people around the world that have exactly the same thoughts. Go and watch my other videos on emetophobia, especially if you don't have children yet and you've been kind of worried that you think you might not be able to because of your emetophobia, because I've done a video on exactly this topic, how I kind of not overcame it, because it's still obviously a big struggle in my life, but how I have learnt to deal with it and how it's basically not the end of the world and you can do it. So I will link that below, it's in the description box, go and watch it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching, goodbye.